Hello everyone, welcome to our channel edu2psychology, a dedicated channel meant for seekers who are interested in the subject of psychology. It is for everyone and anyone who is willing to learn, understand and enhance their subject knowledge. Are you in search of videos to clear the concept of psychology or to understand the foundation of psychology? Or maybe to know the application of the discipline? Whatever it is related to psychology, you will find it here. I understand the importance of a good quality study material, as I have had some good and not so good experiences while my search for the same. I have cleared my master's in psychology, and I understand the importance and how valuable it is to find good online videos to clear the foundation and related concepts. So finally, when I finish my master's, I'm pretty much confident about what all will be sharing with you on this channel, that is edu2psychology. So we will be covering random study material. We will also be covering textbooks from CBSE, university books of edu2psychology, both bachelor's and master's, and honors of master's psychology as well. Now, psychology. Psychology, what is psychology? We wonder many a times whether it's a science or an art. Does this includes the study of human behavior, animal behavior, things around us? What is it? So psychology as a subject is undoubtedly very interesting and easily catches attention of almost everyone around, as this is a discipline that aims to understand the complexities of mental process, experiences, and behavior of an individual in different contexts and much more. So psychology is concerned with almost all aspects of our life. The field of psychology deals with behavioral, psychology is concerned with almost all aspects of our life. The field of psychology deals with behavioral aspect of human beings, and that is probably the reason why everyone is interested to know about psychology. On the other hand, there are many misconceptions also about psychology. Many people think that psychology deals with dealing with abnormal people only. Some other fields of psychologists can read your mind just by looking at you or your face or forehead. You might have heard the term psychology, psychological, or mental, etc. and etc. But do you know what is the meaning of psychology and how did it evolve? Is psychology a science or art? What is a science or what are its characteristics? What is the subject matter of psychology? Now in this channel, you will find all your answers and much more to so many questions. By studying psychology, you will be able to understand what psychology is and what it is not. This lecture will introduce the subject of psychology. So do you know the word psychology is derived from two Greek words, psyche and logos. I'll come to the next slide. Okay. These are topics. First of all, let me introduce to the topics. What all we are going to cover in this lecture. This is our lecture first. What is psychology? Its origin and evolution. Definition of psychology, behavior and its characteristics, why behavior is important, we'll get to know via the definition of psychology, what is critical thinking and task of psychology, and scope of psychology. Okay, now psychology. So, the psychology word comes from two Greek words, psyche and logos. Psyche means soul, or if the second term was given as life. The soul and life, it's one and the same thing. So that is psyche. Now logos means knowledge or explanation, study or investigation of something. The founder of psychology were both philosopher and psychologist. They try to find answers to the philosophical questions in a scientific manner, like distinction between nature and nurture, existence of free will, etc. and etc. The word psychology dates back in 16th century. Now, it was in Latin, some psychologia word was used, but it became popular in Germany at around early 18th century. Now, Christopher Wolff was the one who was behind the popularity of this term. Now, there came one fellow, Herbert Spencer. He published his first volume of Principles of Psychology in 1870. Now, psychologists preferred using the word mind rather than soul. And why would they do that? Because it was difficult to, measure the term soul. It was not scientifically proven how they would do experiments, how they would. It was a vague and a very vast, term. So they always preferred using the term mind over the soul. Now, they've separated philosophy. They separated psychology from philosophy. Initially, it was originated from philosophy, but later on they separated the philosophy in 19th century. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Now, next slide also talks about the origin and evolution. Now, as we understand, the origin is way back in 1870s. Now, psychology was not in common use before 19th century, and the field of psychology did not actually become an independent science until the middle of 19th century. Now, psychology emerged as an independent academic discipline in 1879 when a German philosopher, he is a very famous philosopher, William Wundt, also known as the father of modern psychology. Now, when he established the first psychology laboratory at the University of Leipzig, Germany, then came the time when psychology became a unique field. It has identity of its own. Now, it was no more a part of philosophy, and the laboratory was there. So, the William Wundt was given the title of father of modern psychology. Now, psychology, as we said earlier, became independent in 1879 after the establishment of the psychology laboratory at Germany. Now, according to Wundt was the medical doctor by training. The famous Wundt, the father of modern psychology, he was medical doctor by training, and he was fortunate to work with some great psychologists of the 19th century. Now, Wundt is traditionally recognized as the founder or father of modern psychology. And that was the year when psychology finally emerged as a unique field. So that's a good news for us. So let's go to the next slide. Now this slide talks about the definition of psychology. I know it is very difficult to define psychology as it is a very vast scope. Now, as a discipline was emerging, there were long debates as what should be studied in psychology. What should we include, what should we exclude, and how should we study? Now, the most popular definition is that it is a science of human and animal behavior. I repeat, it is a science of human and animal behavior, and it includes the application of this science to different problems of human beings. Now, the most accepted definition today is psychology is the science of behavior and mental processes. Thus, there are three parts in definition. First is, psychology is a science because it systematically tries to gather data by careful observation and recording events or behavior of humans and animals under controlled experimental conditions. Hence, it becomes science. Thus, measurement of behavior is as objective as psychology as possible in psychology. The knowledge that is gained collecting data with the help of experiments and other methods of observation is then applied to solve real-life problems. Now, secondly, the term behavior in the definition. The behavior term is the second term that is used in definition, which implies the overt action or reaction. We will talk about the behavior in brief later on. We will explain the characteristic, what exactly the behavior is. We'll come to that later on in the next slide. Now, whether the animals or humans do whatever they do that is of interest can be recorded, such as action, thoughts, emotion, attitude, etc. Now, lastly, the mental process. The term here, mental processes. Now, mental processes refer to all the internal processes such as thinking, feeling, remembering. So, in brief, psychology is a science that seeks to understand and predict human and animal behavior as per the definition given by Morgan, King and Robinson in 1984. That's their famous psychologist. Now, according to the, can I move it? No, okay. Now, according to the American Psychological Association, psychology is the study of the mind and behavior. The discipline embraces all aspects of the human experiences, from the functions of the brain to the actions of nations, from child development to care for the aged. In every conceivable setting, from scientific research centers to mental health care services, the understanding of behavior is the enterprise of psychologists. So that is a definition given by American Psychological Association. Now, psychology has been defined in a number of ways by various authors. Psychologists have been debating on whether psychology should focus on mind, consciousness or behavior. Now, over the past 130 years, it's a pretty long time, we have come a long way. So, let us see how the definitions have been modified over these many years. Now, earlier as we have discussed, the psychology was a part of philosophy. Ancient philosophers were interested in the study of soul. Thus, it was first defined in terms of the science of soul. However, since the term soul has a very wide and comprehensive meaning, it was considered as a vague term and was criticized severely in the Middle Ages. The term was criticized because there were questions regarding the physical existence, the weight, the volume of the soul, and so on. So the definition of psychology as the study of soul became unacceptable, primarily because no convincing proof or evidence of the precise nature of soul was furnished. It was discarded because of its metaphysical nature, and it was found inadequate to satisfy the canons of science. Thus, this definition was not accepted by psychologists. Now, there were many definitions came after they discarded the soul definition. Now, some of the famous definition we'll be discussing here is psychology is the science of human and animal behavior. It includes the science to human problems. That was by one of the very renowned psychologists, Morgan, and his group in 1986. Now, another one says the scientific study of behavior and mental process. That's what psychology is. According to Feldman in 1996, that's not very late, he defined psychology as a scientific study of behavior and mental processes. The scientific study of behavior and mental processes and how they are affected by organisms' physical state, mental state, and external environment, according to Jarvis and Wade in 1997. In 1999, Baron has explained psychology as the science of behavior and cognitive process. In 2003, Nari has defined scientific study of behavior and mind as psychology. Now, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we have covered till 2003. So now, in 2004, I think again one great gentleman in the field of psychology, he says he has rather defined psychology as a science in which behavioral and other evidence is used to understand the internal process leading people and members of other species to behave as they do, why they behave the way they do. So that is defined by psychology. Now let's go to the next slide. Couple of more definitions. Okay. Now in 2008, Russell defined psychology as a science that studies behavior and mental processes. Now it is evident we've gone through so many definitions, as it is evident in the definitions that the study of behavior of human or animal has been emphasized in all of them. So they've been emphasizing on the study of behavior. So let's go to another slide now. Now here we will be discussing what is behavior. Now first of all, we will study the definition of behavior. Now behavior is, what is behavior? Are observable actions and response of human beings and animals. Observable actions and response of human beings and animals. Behavior also includes not so directly observable activities such as inner mental or cognitive, we can say, processes, feelings, thoughts, as long as they can be observed and measured in a systematic way. So the concrete definition of behavior is they are observable action and responses that can be measured and that are outer and inner processes. Inner processes, your emotions, your feeling, thoughts, your cognitive processes. So that is behavior. So why are we discussing behavior? Because that is part of our definition that we have gone through with the psychological study of human behavior. Now here we will be discussing the nature and characteristics of behavior. So basically behavior is a broad term and a complex phenomena, and we will discuss the nature and characteristics of behavior. According to psychologists, behavior is everything or anything that a human being or animal does that can be observed in some way. In other words, behavior includes all actions and responses of organisms that can be measured directly or indirectly. Behavior not only means bodily movement, but can also include mental and cognitive processes such as your feelings, your attitude, your thoughts, emotions, and overall interventions, which cannot be observed directly, but can be measured indirectly through what people say, like their vocal behavior, how they react to different person, problems, and situations. Now, let us see the general characteristic of behavior. The behavior is influenced by a number of factors. Now, as you can see here, these are the factors that we have prepared on a slide. Now, the factors are biological, cultural, social, environmental, past experiences, motivational, emotional, cognitive, your thoughts, emotion, feelings, etc. Now, behavior varies in complexity. Now, what do we mean by the term complexity? Behavior can be simple as picking a pen, waving a friend, or reflex responses like sneezing, etc. Some other behaviors include certain skills which became a habit over a period of time, such as playing a guitar, cycling, etc., etc. Yet some other behaviors involve complex activities like repairing a car. So activities such as landing on the moon, flying a fighter plane, rock climbing, etc. are some of the examples of highly complex behavior. Now the second point is the factor influencing behavior are of different kind. So either they belong to individual, or second belong to environment. So these are the two large set of factors. Factors pertaining to an individual can be categorized under physiological and psychological. That means physiological, when I say use the term physiological, that means biological needs. Physiological needs are biological needs such as hunger, thirst, etc. And psychological means ideas, your opinions or attitudes, etc. The environment factors, which is the second factor we have mentioned here, includes physical surroundings, family and friends, the large society, and even the overall culture and social background. Now, what are these individual differences? Behavior also varies from one person to other, as well as from one group of people to the other group of people. People differ in their physiological and bodily condition, in their past experiences, in their abilities, in the background, etc. It is therefore natural that if 10 people are put in same situation, each person's behavior differs from that of others in some respect or in some degree. Now, behavior also shows similarities. Now, what do you mean by this? Now, this means that behavior differs from one person to another. But this does not mean that all people differ from all other at all times and in all situations. That means there is also a considerable degree of similarity in behavior among people. For instance, if a particle of dust falls on a person's eye, she or he tries to remove it. This type of behavior is universally found. Now, behavior is always purposeful and goal-oriented or goal-directive. Origin of psychology, human behavior is always purposeful and one's actions are always directed towards some goal or the other. A boy sitting and studying suddenly gets up and takes a glass of water. Here the goal is to have a glass of water and the purpose is to quench his thirst. On the other hand, a boy is sitting and studying and feels cold. He gets up, switches off the fan. Here the goal is to switch off the fan and purpose is to avoid the discomfort of cold. So all our behaviors can be categorized under approach behavior, positive goal directed, or avoidance behavior, that is negative goal directive. Next point is behavior is changeable. Behavior to a large extent, as mentioned earlier, has a number of factors influencing behavior. In view of this, it is possible to change behavior by modifying these factors. It is this changeability which enables a bad man to become a good man and a good man to become a bad man. This is very characteristic which helps people to adjust to new surroundings. These changes are the result of one practices or experiences or learning, how you adapt yourself, how you experience things, how you perceive things. Next is, behavior also shows stability. Though emphasis has been laid on the possible changes in behavior, it is must to be mentioned that life is not always full of all sorts of changes. While behavior changes, at the same time, there is also certain stability in behavior. It does not change with every change in the environment, nor do all forms of behavior change. Human behavior shows a lot of stability. For instance, you may still find your grandmother preferring old ideas, old ways of life, though she is living in ultra-modern society. Now, behavior is integrated. As already mentioned, behavior is influenced by a number of factors and a variety of purposes. Every human being has physiological, psychological, personal, and social purposes. He or she has been the subject of different learning experiences. In spite of all this, behavior also shows an order and a hierarchy of purposes. Every individual behaves as a total person, and this process of organization of different purposes, different learnings, and different influencing factors result in an integration of behavior. We come from different culture, we speak different languages, we have different accents, our factors have been different. But the integration becomes our behavior. Thus, an individual put in different situations still shows certain characteristic way and styles of behavior which help us to understand and predict his or her behavior. We often say, Ram is a pleasant person, Gomit is an unpleasant person, Krishna is a sociable person, so on and on. Psychologists use the term personality to describe this process of integration. The greater the degree of integration in a person's behavior, the more effective her or his behavior is likely to be. It can therefore be appreciated that behavior is a complex phenomenon and studying behavior is a great idea. Now let us come to the next slide, which talks about critical thinking and task of psychology. Now, what is this critical thinking? Now, according to psychologists, according to the psychologist, there's one hallmark of science, that is critical thinking. A group of psychologists define the goal of critical thinking as fostering the skills like the ability to inquire about cause and event, increase curiosity about behavior, knowledge about research method, ability to analyze arguments critically. Now, according to Bears, in 1995, critical thinking means reasoned judgments, logical and well-thought judgments. So now we have discussed critical thinking. The psychologists are always guided by scientific principles. They have the ability to inquire about the cause and event, their curiosity about the behavior, how it happened, why it happened, what led a certain behavior to happen, and to analyze it critically with a reason, with a measurement. So that's the critical thinking is very important for a psychologist. Now, what are the tasks of psychology? Now, the task of psychology would include observe, investigate and identify factors which influence behavior, also assess their relative influences. Now, these are basically, as we have understand what is psychology, where the psychology has been coming from. Now, we need to understand what are the basic tasks of the psychologist and what do they do. So, critical thinking we have already gone through. We'll now understand the task of a majority of the psychologists that they need to go through. So, it's basically a science of behavior that we already know by now. So, now a psychologist observe, investigate and identify factors which influence the behavior and also assess their relative influences. They investigate the role of each of these factors separately and together in producing similarity and differences in the behavior. So these are the basic tasks. There are certain more tasks that we will cover here. Okay. So now first we know the first task would be identify the factors which influence behavior and assess the influence. Second would be investigate the role of each of these factors separately and together and understand the similarities and differences in the behavior. Third, after the investigation is done, based on these investigations, psychology should arrive at generalization in the form of theories, laws, and principles explaining the similarities and also differences in behavior. Then it should also explain the complementary function of the factors and the process in generating similarity as well as differences among people. Since behavior is purposive behavior over, the behavior will be purposive. So psychology must investigate the nature, kinds and number of purposes, their origin, their development and the relationship among them. Now, since behavior changes, it is the responsibility of a psychology to study and explain the nature of such changes, kinds, the process which governs them, and the interaction among different kinds of changes. Now, stability and consistency is behavior also studied by psychologists. Now, we will discuss the master concern of psychology. The master concern of psychology is to explain how change and stability, similarities and differences are organized and integrated to produce both generality and uniqueness in behavior. Now we'll go to the next slide. We will be discussing scope of psychology. Now we understand that psychology is it's a very exciting field. It is at once familiar, exotic, surprising and challenging on the other hand. Psychology is about each of us. It is about you, me, our surroundings. So it includes each of us. No wonder why everybody is so interested in the field of psychology today. Now it asks us to take a reflective attitude as we inquire how can we step outside of ourselves to look objectively at how we live, think, feel and act. Psychologists believe The answer is through careful thought, observation and inquiry. Now, this is an important area of application, yet it is not the only area which we said mentally ill individuals, treating mentally ill individuals, as many think that this is the prime area. Yes, it definitely is an important area, but it is not the only area. Now, psychology finds useful application in an individual life, almost from the womb to tomb. Psychology, like all academic discipline, has its own concepts such as intelligence, personality, stress, learning, memory, thinking, perception, etc. This will be covering in coming lectures. Now, there are many of the concepts of psychology which we will find familiar, many would be new, and there are several topics including psychology that we often come through: the nervous system, sensation, perception, learning and memory, intelligence, language and thinking, growth and development, motivation and emotion, personality, stress, psychological disorders, ways of treating these disorders, sexual behavior, and the behavior of people in social settings such as group and organization. So we will be covering many topics in our next lectures or the coming lectures. So basically, psychology, what is the goal of psychology? Like other science, they're here to describe, explain, predict and control the phenomena it studies. It attempts to describe, explain, predict, that is again very important, predict and control behavior and mental processes. Try to explain why and how of a behavior. It attempts to explain the why and how of a behavior. The knowledge of psychology can also be applied to solve various problems facing human beings, be it at home, society, workplace, or in the whole world. So now we understand how important psychology is. This is the end of our first lecture. Hope to see you soon. And as we'll keep on posting more lectures on the channel. So thanks for your time, and please do subscribe our channel, press the bell icon, and we'll keep on posting such knowledgeable and valuable lectures in future. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.